All right, hello everybody. This is your host Anthony Horvath. This is the Gutencast, and if you are watching this later, it's because you tried to be here to watch it at the scheduled time, only to find out that I wasn't here. Very unprofessional. What a loser! I know, I get it. You don't have to fill up the comment section with it. I get it already. That's just the way it is. Short story is my daughter's in track, and this year she started a new track event. Yep, sound check is good. And I did not take into account when that event would occur during the meet, and thus I was at the meet longer than I thought I would be. So there it is. So tonight I have a guest. Is Rodney Gair. You can see his shining visage there in the thumbnail. But first, before I talk about him as an author, I mean the thumbnail says we have a new author. Who's the we? We is me. Is what the publishing company that I own. I have several publishing imprints. GutenBookPress is going to be releasing this book in a physical form, but you can actually the ebook is already available. It's linked in the description. Go ahead, pick it up, like it, review it, leave the stars that you think are appropriate, which hopefully are 4 and above. And if they're less than that, then forget we ever had this conversation. That's something like that maybe. Anyway, I think it's good. I've read it. I enjoy it. We are he Rodney is he's the one that spearheaded the ebook versions, but the Gutenbook Press is going to be releasing the physical form in both hard and soft cover in full color. These will be great gifts for children or just something you can read with your kids and or grandkids. It's a good read. And the anyway, so that's how this ties in. And if you want to connect with us as a author wanting to see their book in print, go ahead and reach out. But certainly you can do that. But what I'd like to point out is we have a an online book retail site, and we have about 30 authors. Uh, you should go and buy their books. You should buy many copies of their books because they're great books, and consider it your service to humanity. Um, the 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 way the world is right now, there's just so much content that's competing for people's eyeballs. I guess what I'm really saying is, uh, you know, I've connected with some really great people, and you should find a way as the viewer of this video or the consumer of a book or whatever it is to make it personal somehow. Connect with the authors or the producers, whatever it happens to be, because you can do that today in a way that was not available 30 years ago, right? You just couldn't do it. So we're on X at Gutenbook Press. You can find my own personal one. It's linked easily. Uh, our guest tonight, Rodney, is also um, linked from the main social media sites on X in particular. Adopt an author. Make it your personal mission to see them succeed because not for any stupid thing like desperation or anything like that, but because you have the opportunity to contribute to um, uh, what am I looking for here? Like a microcosm. Like how about if I say it this way? And this might actually tie in with tonight's discussion a little bit. Like the world is so big, and historically we've had so little ability to do anything alter it or change it. But because of technologies and other things, we have the ability to connect with people in personal and powerful ways. And that's what I want our readers to do with my authors, so that when you're reading a book, you don't just put it back on the shelf, but and be done with it, but say, I really like this book. Who can I tell about it? And then reach out to the author and make those connections. Anyway, that's the mindset of the GutenCast. And I've really talked way too much about it. So enough of that. That's all I have to say about that. So before I introduce Rodney here, I want to show you a little video, which I have all queued up, because tonight's guest wrote a children's book which is based on a true story, although this, strictly speaking, is not the true story that he's referring to. But we'll get to that. But it was really timely that this happened. This is the video of a recent event at the San Diego Zoo where there was an earthquake and the elephants could feel it. So let me just show you this video here. You're not going to be able to hear it. You're just going to be able to see it. I'm sure the audio is added to it anyway. So there's the earthquake. So what you see is all the elephants sort of rallying together and making a circle around. It's called an alert circle. So they're on notice. They're looking for danger. So this is a really, I find that to be really interesting that animals can do that. We know from other earthquakes that they can sometimes sense them long before we can, and it raises the question which tonight's author raises in his book. So if animals can sense the small changes or the sensations of the earthquake from far distances, what else might we as humans be doing in our environment that animals can be impacted by, which we're kind of oblivious to? And what responsibilities does that put on us? So that's what we're going to talk about, and the one we're going to talk about it with is our guest, Rodney Gair, and there he is. Say hi, Rodney.
Hi, Rodney.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Tony, how you doing?
We'll just make. I'm doing great. Let me just do a quick sound check. Yep, there you are. When you're a one-man band, you have to kind of do everything. So
Sure.
yeah. So I'm sorry that you got put off for almost 4 hours, 3 hours at least. Are you hanging in there? Okay.
I bet you don't do this to Oprah.
No, no. Well, the one time, and now she won't come back. So
Well, I promise I'll come back.
I appreciate that. So what's your first takeaway about that elephant video?
You know, when I first saw that, the elephant sensed the earthquake and built that circle around the youngest elephant, the calf in the herd, to protect it. And that, of course, threw me back to the things that I was reading and learning about as I was writing the book. But I didn't have to learn about it when I was writing the book. I somehow knew that elephants had really sensitive feet and could feel things through the ground. And there's a big part of the story in that book that's based on that. And I tried to remember where or when I ever learned that. And I have no recollection of that. It's just something that I kind of knew. I was obviously taught at some point. Probably goes back to grade school, I suppose. But that video is timely because the elephants reacted to exactly that which I'm talking about in the book, albeit for slightly different reasons. But they do feel things through their feet that other people might not notice standing right beside them. So,
All right. So let's go back to. Let me pull up the video again here. It might be a little bit. Let me pause it here, make it a little bit bigger for people here. So they're just minding their own business, and then what I find fascinating about this is like they have a plan, you know, like I don't know if they're communicating by vocalizations or whatever. That's not in the video or whatever, but clearly they have some idea that something's wrong, and they're like literally circling the wagons, right? I mean,
yeah.
this is a really it, sophisticated response, I would say. You know, so you chose elephants for your book. Let's get the cover up here. Um, is there a reason why did you pick elephants?
Okay, so this actually goes back a couple of years for me. Um, there was some news headlines, international news headlines out of China. This would be in starting in 2020, I guess, and running through 2021. Went on for about a year and a half. But a herd of elephants, 25 or so, I think, altogether, suddenly picked up one day and left or departed southwestern China, just adjacent to India, and started walking across the country. And it was in the news for several weeks because it's something that had never been seen before, at least not in China, anyways. Now, elephants travel great distances all the time. They walk all over the place every day, but they generally stay within the same geographic area. And this particular herd was just walking a straight line right across the countryside. And it sparked quite a discussion for many months with scientists jumping in and saying, well, this is evidence that there's a problem with the food supply in that part of the jungle in southwestern China. And some people were talking about water contamination. And the Chinese government, for its part, jumped in and said, this is a sign of the tremendous success of our elephant conservation program.
Of
There's so
course.
many elephants, it's become crowded, so some of them are just moving out.
Hmm.
Now, the thing is, all of those arguments kind of got flushed away when the elephants turned around and went home again. They obviously didn't perceive there was a problem. They were on, some kind of a mission. You could maybe call it a vacation, I suppose, but because the reason was never really identified, that left the whole idea completely wide open for somebody like me to come along and
Right.
explain why the elephants were actually doing what they were doing. So that's kind of where the genesis of the story came from. It was built out of that real world story of elephants walking across China, and it created a lot of opportunities to uh, look at the story from the perspective of the elephant calf.
Mm-hmm.
In that video from the San Diego Zoo, the elephant calf is the one that's being protected by the other elephants. Um, it talks about the things going on in the environment that could cause elephants to want to do something like that. And because it's a children's story, it's definitely targeted at children. You can work some other things into it as well. And from the title, you can see somehow the Chinese emperor gets involved in this as well.
Right.
And of course, China doesn't have an emperor today, probably, but they have had for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And yeah, it all just kind of, when it began to mesh together as an idea in my head, then I started putting it down on paper, and now we have a book about it. I have the answer to why the elephants were walking across China.
The definitive answer.
Definitive.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Actually. Yeah. So what I should have done is I should have had you send me some other the pictures like I have the pictures because I'm publishing the book, but they're embedded in the book. I should have asked for you to send them as standalone so I could show folks some of the artwork a little bit more. But the cover is pretty representative, I would say, of what's in the book. Don't you think?
Very much so. With the elephants that were involved, you can see our protagonist in the story, young Jihao, is the small calf walking next to the larger elephant there. The Forbidden City in the background, that's a clue about where the story goes as the elephants are walking along. And the book is a bit of a sightseeing tour of famous landmarks in China. And China's filled with really interesting places to see. I don't know if you've been over there, Tony, but it is as a vacation spot, it's actually a worthwhile destination because there's thousands of years of history and lots of things to see over there.
So when how many times have you been to China?
Um, 15, 16 times.
Wow, crazy. Uh, can I ask like what was the is that so like I know uh, that you are involved in you're a first responder or you were now you have a rescue organization. Was it an association with those activities?
It was. We were getting emergency medical equipment manufactured in China and then importing it into Canada.
Okay,
So those trips to China weren't leisure. And ironically, I've never been back for a vacation, but it's on my bucket list. I've always wanted to go back because there is a lot of things to see and do there. But the trips that I was making were visiting factories where each of the
interesting.
different components for these kits were being manufactured and then brought together in a final assembly location in Guangzhou before they were exported to Vancouver and brought into North America.
Interesting. So you have it set in China when you say that your book kind of goes over some of the landmarks, were some of the landmarks that are in the book ones that you saw firsthand?
Hmm. In a sense, I make a reference to the big airports in China, and they have some very impressive airfields there. Um, the rivers and the boat traffic on the rivers is also very impressive, and I've seen some of that. Um, One of the cities that I went to was right at the end of the Silk Road, the original Silk Highway from 2,000 years ago,
Okay,
Marco Polo. And those, apparently the cobblestones of that road are the same cobblestones that were there 2 millennia
that's
ago.
crazy.
It's
Huh?
yeah, it really is, and the Chinese are very aware of it. By the way, their history, very proud of it.
Yeah,
There is some amazing stuff over there.
it would be fun to talk about that that aspect because although maybe not in this podcast, where just to round that off, but like China, the relationships between China, Canada, and the United States right now are interesting. Well, to say the
Pretty
least.
complex.
Yeah, and the fact that you had insight into the factories, and that sort of how that all worked could be shed interesting light on modern events. But I don't know if you want to. Yeah, I'm just sort of springing this on you now. I don't know if you want to say anything about that or if we can return to it some other time.
Mm. Well, what you're saying reminds me of a meme that I saw the other day that showed an image of the world on fire in the background and somebody in the foreground saying, "Hey, anybody want to buy a book?" Uh,
Right?
nobody's really paying attention to that just now because there's so many other things going on in the world.
Yeah.
I, I would say a lot of this stuff is momentary. Uh, Political relationships between countries, leaders come and go,
Mm-hmm.
uh, policies with different nations come and go. Honestly, I would be a little bit apprehensive about going to China myself just right now.
Right.
But one of the things that I remember, the first time I went to China, I didn't want to go to China.
Mm.
I was a reluctant traveler. I was very apprehensive about it. But when I got there, I found, uh, and I think this is true of almost any country you might go to. People on the street, people that live there,
Yeah.
the average Joe, Very nice people,
right?
very accommodating, very helpful, very friendly. I still correspond with people that I met over there 20 years ago. And, you have to kind of set aside the high level politics that are going on and keep in mind that it is possible to have friends in these other places. And yeah, it might be prudent to be careful about travel to China right now because there is unusually high tension, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 5,000 year history of China, um, this is just a brief moment in time. I
Sure,
wouldn't fuss about it too much.
sure. So, from that point of view, your book, like there's an emperor in your book. There hasn't been an emperor in China for more than 100 years, to my understanding. Um,
Mhm.
and uh, I mean, I liked it. Um, of course, your emperor, he leaves a lot to the imagination. We'll say, like you can kind of decide the emperor's almost whoever you want the emperor to be. Is that a reasonable way of putting that? Like you're not like trying to fix the emperor as a person of history necessarily, or are you?
No, the idea of the emperor in the book is, first it's based on the idea that all kids like magic.
Sure.
All people like magic. We all wish it was something that was true. So weaving magic into the story, that was a part of the presence of the emperor. And what was happening there is that there wasn't actually just one emperor, but several. So you get the wisdom of several emperors from the ages that appear in the story, and they magically appear. So it's not a literal emperor that's sitting on the throne when they get to Beijing, where the Forbidden City's at.
Hmm.
Um, does that answer that question?
Well, yeah,
So
sure.
it is a little loose, but I couldn't make it too realistic because,
Right.
as you mentioned, China hasn't had a real emperor for over 100 years now. So
But we wish that it did in some ways, don't we? Like there's a certain charm to it, right?
every afternoon watching the news these days, yeah,
Yes, there we go. Back to current
yeah.
events. Yeah. Um, so we the purpose of tonight, if there is going to be a purpose of tonight, is really just to uh, personalize this book to give the viewers a chance to get to know you and and yeah, we'll talk about the book a little bit too. But you heard me at the very beginning. Like part of the mission of that I have for all my publishing endeavors is not just to get books out there and make some money, although obviously I'm not opposed, but like to develop these relationships and to facilitate relationships between authors and readers, which is to be fair is partly a reaction to the way the book selling uh, universe has changed over the last 20 years. In the old days, the way that you sold a book is you got an agent, then the agent got you a publisher, and then your book went to the bookstore, and people went to the bookstore and they bought the books. Well, now all the bookstores are closed, and no one's reading the newspaper to get book reviews anymore. So they're like how you actually find out about a book has changed. How you actually buy that book is very impersonal, and from the point of view, a lot of times it's just on Amazon, right? If you get that far, and you don't smell the books anymore, right? You don't have that whole experience, and so part of like what I've tried to do in response to that is make these connections between the the author and the reader because that's something that can't be recreated. You know what I mean? Like if someone gets to know you and decides that they like you, they will buy every book that you ever write until you die. You know what I mean? And that's the best customer that we could possibly want.
Your lips to God's ears.
That's right. So yeah, you're gonna say something.
Uh, well, I was thinking about a couple of things there. One, you and I have talked about, you're aware that I published a couple of books prior to this, and
Yeah.
you and I have talked about collaborating in some way in the past. And I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to have you do this one, and especially in this format. On Amazon, there's apparently about 7,500 books a day published. And with that, just that sheer velocity
Right.
of material going through, somebody that's interested in buying a book couldn't possibly even see all of the new titles that are going past, because
Right.
they're whipping past at such a speed.
Yeah.
So you're right, getting to know the author, getting to know the publishers even and their interests.
Right.
And I think that, that does have real value. And then weaving in the modern technology, Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and yeah, even Amazon. As all as channels for putting the word out about the book and the kind of message that it has. I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing, um, and I could talk for a little while about the creative process in writing and how it's just as enjoyable writing as it is
Right.
reading.
Yeah.
Because when you start writing a chapter, you don't actually know how that chapter is ending until you get to the end of it. And there were some parts of this book where I had to stop and do a little bit of research that took a few days.
Hmm.
So watching the story unfold as an author is really exciting, and this is still a part of the process for me. Is looking forward to the print version of the book, and it's exciting because the print version is different than the electronic versions. The Kindle version, for example, in which as an author I'm confined to a very specific amount of real estate. And this book doesn't have a massive number of pictures, but the pictures that are in it are very important, and they
Hmm.
help. They do more than just illustrate the story. They give life to the characters, and they literally give color to the story. So seeing that in print on a larger format, nice quality hardcover book, wow, that's very exciting. And I'm also finding that I don't know if it's just my particular circle of friends and family, but they don't like electronic devices very much.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody's asking me for the hard copy version or the paperback version,
Right.
and yeah, I didn't start with that. I started with the electronic because it was quick and easy.
Yeah. It's pretty. That's it's funny that you say that because in my years of publishing, which if I do some math now is almost 20 years, I think, pretty close to 20 years now. There have been people who have been really quick to say, "Okay, but when can I read it in the ebook?" And then other people who are like, "I'll never read that in an ebook. When can I have the hard copy?" I've had people refuse to buy a book if it was in softcover. It had to be hardcover. So it's just like, and today at least you can accommodate all of those desires. Um, but one of the reasons why I brought that up is because back if you go back to like the year 2000, give or take, they were talking about how the the digital format was going to just get rid of books altogether, the physical books, right? And that's never happened. People still want to have the physical book in their hand. They want to be able to smell it. Like it's like that experience of just can't be recreated, no matter how fancy Amazon is with their innovations on reading a screen. It just can't do it. In fact, have you actually tried to view your book on one of the Kindle devices to see how it like does it represent well?
I don't have a Kindle. I have a tablet, and the tablet is in color. So my pictures come across with the right color. Most Kindles, I know you can get color Kindles, but I think most people still have black and white Kindles. Mm, I'm not sure that's going to be exactly the same experience for the people that are reading that.
Right.
Um, I mean, the story is obviously exactly the same, but the way the pictures come across do make a difference to it. So, and it's a children's book, and this is kind of an aside, I guess, but uh, when you're putting these books out, you have to define the age group that it's suitable for when you're
Yeah.
writing for children. And because children change so much in a short period of time, there's very narrow age groups. And I ended up describing it on Amazon as being suitable for ages 5 to 12 because what I noticed was that even older children, just preteens, still seem to really enjoy books that have pictures in them. Even if they've moved on to more advanced stories, more complex stories in their reading, it's still nice to get that break every few pages where you have an image to look at. It
Hmm.
just gives your brain a moment to kind of relax and just absorb information in a slightly different way. So I think this will be the same. This is a book that would be read by mom and dad, or an uncle or an aunt or something to a small child, 4 or 5 years old. But 7, 8, 9, 10. This is a book that they would self-read, and even going up towards 10 or 11 years old, it's still an entertaining book with an entertaining story and some interesting scientific facts about
Yes.
elephants.
Right.
So,
Yeah. You can never underestimate the power of interesting facts about animals on the psyche of an 8-year-old reader.
oh, and especially with elephants, kids love elephants. So
Yeah.
all kids love elephants.
So in the chat, I don't know if you're able to see it. I don't know if you're watching it or not on the side. Um, but
I'm not.
we have a question. Somebody would like to hear. They would like to hear about your creative process. Because we did sort of bring that up a little bit. You brought it up. It's your fault. So if you don't want to talk about it, just just be careful what you say the next time. Now the I have a feeling that most of the people that are going to watch this, you're like a brand new entity. Like in a way, it's this is like. Do you ever watch the show Seinfeld?
Yeah, yeah, I was sucked into that for
Okay.
several years in a
Do
row.
you remember the stuff about universes colliding? Like
Oh yeah, yeah.
you got friends.
Bizarro Jerry. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was that. It was they had friends in one part of their world, and they had friends in another part of their life, and then there was all of a sudden the friends met, and it was like, no, like they're supposed to be separate. In a way, that's what's going on here. Is like you and I have been part of a universe of acquaintances and events and activities that um, is pretty unique that most of my viewers don't know anything about. And it works the other way, right? You're gonna get to start meeting some of those people too. But like you had some other, so you were or you are a first responder in a way, right? Like, so let's just start there before we get to the things that you've been writing. So like right now, um, we'll set aside the lightning stuff. Um, like when do you personally in your outfit get called into action?
Hmm. Well, I used to work with Banff Fire Department and Banff Emergency Medical Services. I live in Western Canada, for people that aren't already familiar with that. Um, I've done that for quite a long time, and I guess if I think about my adult life, virtually my entire adult life has been involved in public safety in some way, working with EMS or working with the fire department. In 1991, I started my own company, uh, initially doing consulting, but was very quickly picked up to provide rescue services for one of the ropeway operations in Banff. And we've been doing that ever since. We're coming up 35 years now doing that.
I'm sorry,
So that is
rope way. Is
ropeway, so gondolas. If you think of a chairlift at a ski area, a little
okay.
bit bigger than that, a gondola. So the gondolas are the main customer that we provide services for through my company. So Mostly we train. Real world incidents involving those lifts only occur at intervals of around once every 6 or 7 years.
Hmm.
That being said, we've been called out 3 times in the last 2 years. So you never know. They're very dependable machines. Statistically, they're safer than flying on a modern Western airliner.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but they're still machines, and
Right.
can have electronic problems and mechanical problems. So we're endlessly on standby to assist those lifts with breakdowns uh, involving those things.
So that would be the so basically a gondola breaks, people are stranded, suspended in the air. They call you something. Is that about right?
Well, it'd be more accurate to say they call the team.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
As a one-person show, I wouldn't be able to do very much, but a
Yes.
properly trained and equipped group of people can do a
Okay.
lot.
Yeah.
Help out.
And it's a you so it's one of those things where, as you say, it doesn't happen very often, but because it's so specialized, you have to have specialized trained crew to deal with it when it does happen. So people like you have to be out there. They have to exist, even if they're not called, as frequently as your local fire department.
That's right.
Yeah.
The kind of equipment that we have and the training that we do is, it's all based in public safety principles. And my training background is from the fire service principally, but it all has to be adapted for those lifts. And what we do with the equipment and the way we do things is specialized. And one of the things about when we're working, if we get into trouble, we can't just call the fire department. We have to be capable of self-rescue and take
Hmm.
care of ourselves.
Yeah.
They just don't have the same equipment, and their personnel don't have the same experience on those lifts that we have. So no, it's a niche field in public safety for sure, um, but it's always going to be needed. There are code requirements. You've never heard of skeletons on a ropeway, obviously. So all over the
Right.
world there are rescue teams that do just this.
Sure. Interesting. And so the reason why I asked that line of questions is because some of your first books, as I recall, were nonfiction books related to the rescue environment. Correct? So
You're right.
nonfiction.
You're right. It's just specialized enough that there's actually very little written about how this is done. The book that I put out, as far as I know, it was the first book in English, anyways, that talked about doing rescue on ropeways. And that was one of my first efforts at writing. And when I look back on it now, it's actually just, yeah, it's not. I wish I'd spent a little bit more time editing that book.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
but the basic message is there, and some of the things that people working in that kind of rescue service need to keep in mind are definitely the principles are all contained in that book, which is, by the way, called "Don't Jump." Tongue in cheek, but
Okay. So you've that's the important point that if you're stuck in the gondola and they want to know what to do, they can at least remember the title of the book, which is the advice: don't jump.
that's the basic advice. That's right.
Okay, all right, good to know. So so I somewhere in there you decided to write some fiction, and how many books of fiction have you written?
Well, really, just two now. This would be the second one.
Okay,
The first one, I guess you could say, was hmm, it fits into a gray area.
yeah, it does,
Uh,
doesn't it?
so it's based on a game, very popular first-person shooter type game, which when I was playing it, back at the time that I was playing it, I found was compelling in a lot of ways. Uh, but what really caught my attention was that I discovered, or I realized, that I would sometimes dream about things that happened in the game
Hmm.
in real sleep moments. So, is a game a real world experience, or is game a fiction?
Right.
is a book about a game
Yeah.
real or is that a fiction? So I would say everything that I wrote in the book actually happened in that game. So label that one, Tony.
Yeah.
See where you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Metaphysical candy. How about that? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that's what that is. Sure.
So, like, this is quite the progression, really. We started with nonfiction, life saving stuff, technical, almost technical manuals. You have this quasi piece of fiction, semi nonfiction in the middle, which a virtual exploring a virtual reality, massive multiplayer type of simulation, and now you're doing children's books. Like, so tell us, Rodney, about your creative process.
Well, it's opportunistic, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Um, the I'm not say I wouldn't claim to be a children's author, um, but I'll tell you what. When I first wrote Don't Jump, that book I took to publishers all over the place. I sent 50 copies, maybe around to different publishing houses around Canada and the United States and Europe, and got some really good experience with rejection letters.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those came in quite quite quickly, within a week or two of sending them the manuscript. Some of them took a couple of years to respond. So just
Interesting.
smaller publishing houses that are overwhelmed with submissions.
Huh.
One of the very last ones that I got, though, um, came in the form of a handwritten letter from a very nice lady in New York City, and she was rejecting the book, but she very clearly spelled out the reasons that she was rejecting it. It didn't fit the genre that she normally published.
Mm.
And she said something in a really straightforward way that did resonate with me. And it was something that some of the other publishers had referred to as they were rejecting me. And that was, if only you had written a book about recipes or a children's book.
Uh huh.
Boy, have we got a market for that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not much of a cook, so recipes, probably that's not going to go very far. But when this idea with the elephants came across my radar, that did spark an idea. And I realized that I might have a story that people would be interested in and on a topic that could possibly be easy to sell to publishers.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah, that was as far as that portion of the creative process, that's where this one came from. There is going to be a sequel to this book. And that was, I really only realized that as I was writing this, what I was really writing was the lead into the next story.
Hmm.
And that's underway. I'll probably complete it later this year. It could possibly be available for publishing in the fall, but I think most likely early 2026.
Okay. Well, why don't you take 1 to 2 minutes and just go give a summary of the basic plot of the book.
Okay, well, it starts out right on page one. Our protagonist, young Jihao, uh, the elephants have, for the most part, Chinese names because it's a herd of elephants based in southwestern China, so that would make sense, I think. He sensed something about the world, sensed it through his feet, and noticed right away that all of the adult elephants around him sensed the same thing, and they all realized that there was some kind of a problem. They couldn't quite put their finger on it, so to speak, but they all realized that there was a problem and decided that they needed to do something about it. And that led to a decision to start a journey to go see the one person in the world that they felt they could trust, a previous acquaintance of one of the older elephants, Jugger. He's also one of the main characters, big, old, powerful Asian elephant. And he suggests that the Emperor of China would be the person to ask this very question. He had met him once in India and felt that he was a caring person and a very wise person. And the elephants undertake this journey to go and talk to him and have a little adventure along the way, seeing some of the industry that humans have put together, seeing rivers, seeing the Gobi Desert, seeing the Great Wall of China, all of these, things that most people would know about, I think. Um, but they're illustrated in the story and described in the story through the eyes of Jihao and his walk with his parents and his family to go see the emperor. And then, of course, the experience with the emperor. And after they're there, they have to get home again. So the trip home is a little quicker, but there's a point to that as well. And
Sure.
I should say it's an adventure, and I have to throw in there's some misadventure along the way too.
Yeah, sure. So there's an environmental aspect to it. Uh, it's we're not talking about like psycho crazy environmental stuff.
I
Um,
appreciate you not saying that to my face anyway.
yes. um, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it. How about if I back up a little bit and so like there's a group of people that are out there where the um, the environment is it's like guyism. It may as well be God, right? It's like um, and however they want to perceive it, like they they represent it almost as if their whole life and livelihood or should be geared towards the environment. And if that hurts humans, then so be it. Um, but your book has humans in there, and they are um, implicated to some degree in whatever is the problem with the world that you're talking about. But there's a there's a few places where you make it clear that humans are not necessarily um, bad. They're not. They're not the greatest evil. They have as much right to the world as the animals do. Maybe I'm kind of reading into this because it's 10:35, you know, in the Central Time. But I kind of felt like you were trying to walk a balance between extremes. Am I right in that, or was it was it not intentional? It's just a story that unfolded.
Hmm. Well, that characteristic of the story is, I'd have to say, accidental.
Hmm.
But it's interesting to hear you describe it like that. Um, hmm. Yeah, I didn't. I'm not an environmental activist, but that doesn't mean I'm not aware that it's important to be careful with the environment.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm certainly not somebody who's out campaigning to protect trees, not by any stretch. Um, but there is an inescapable theme in the book that it has something to do with the environment, and even some of the sites that they go past, like big airports or ports, like shipping ports. There's a big coal mine, for example, that they have to walk around. There's things like that that were just coincidentally along the way on the map. I didn't put them in intentionally, but by the time you get to the end of the book, you realize that there is an environmental theme there, and that what they sensed was that the planet was trying to say, "Hey, there's something wrong here." And your take on the elephant's perception of what the people are doing in the book, I think, is right on as well. And describing people as flawed but not evil, flawed but always trying their best, maybe creating problems but then circling back and fixing them afterwards. I think that does describe the way that people are acting in the book as well.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there is it's not an intentional environmental message, but there is an inescapable association with the environment in the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. And I think that there's a really interesting dynamic in these kinds of conversations, like condemning conservatives as being indifferent to the environment. I'm a conservative, I guess you would say, and but I'm also a produce farmer, among other things, and I don't want and that we're not organic, but we can call what we do um, naturally grown. We try to avoid chemicals as much as we possibly can because we don't want them in our food. We That's kind of why we do what we do is so that we can have food that we can trust. We know where it came from, and so like this idea, this dichotomy that because you are not going to make the environment the absolute idol means that you don't care about it at all. I mean, it's just not the case. I care in a very practical way. I would say certainly a lot of farmers, much more people who are much more involved in farming than I am, have a very practical appreciation for how to the need to sustain a healthy environment because their livelihoods depend on it in a way that a lot of those activists they don't depend on the welfare of the land. You know, they know nothing about it. They don't know anything about soil health or soil chemistry or whatever. Whereas most of the farming community like lives or dies based on soil chemistry and what's in whether it's good soil, bad soil, and what's contaminating it or not. You know, so it's just kind of sort of a weird dynamic in the world today, I think.
Well, I'd say as a farmer, you're one of the original environmentalists.
Yeah, sure.
That's whereas environmental activists tend to be more idealists in a lot of ways. It's
Yeah,
not that their ideals are incorrect necessarily,
yeah,
but I do think there's a problem with their messaging right now. It's pretty aggressive. It's a little tightly focused, and it discounts a lot of other things that need to be going on in the world to keep the world turning.
yeah,
And yeah, so there's, it was accidental to have an environmental message in the book, but it is definitely there, and I can see already it's going to be there in the second book too.
sure.
There's an inevitability to that. So just try to keep it. If I do anything deliberately about that,
Hmm.
as far in the creative process, to go back to your viewer's question from a half an hour ago there, um, I'll try to be pragmatic about how I write about that.
Yeah, and just to cover myself a little bit, but also to tie back to your book, like your point was that the people are generally not in the book. They're represented as not willfully trying to destroy the environment, but they make mistakes and eventually they figure it out, and try to fix it. And the American, I can't speak for the Canadians, but I assume it might be similar. The American farmers over the last 150 years did do damage to the environment, but figured it out, right? And you know, it's not they weren't trying to be bad, like it wasn't their goal. But I just want to be fair in representation. That just because they care doesn't mean that they're infallible either. They're just not diabolical, you know.
I don't think of American farmers as diabolical.
No, I know, I know.
Don't worry, Tony.
I know you don't, but I'm, there's some viewers potentially. It is YouTube after all. Anyway, so the, where do we take the conversation from here? So, there's lots of ways that we could take it, really. But so how about this? The you wrote the material, but you used AI to generate the images. Can
Hmm.
you share a little bit about that experience?
Sure. So, along with everybody else, I know AI has been around for some time. I'm working with somebody else on another project right now who's been using AI for almost 18 years already,
Hmm.
which I was very surprised to learn that it's actually been around for that long. Practically, attainably, it's been available to the rest of us for about a year and a half or maybe 2 years now. And first, I think through ChatGPT. When it first came out, I had a quick look at it, had it generate a 250 word essay about grass or something, and it did it instantly and flawlessly, and it made an impression. I was like, okay, I got to circle back to this. But then I started reading news articles too about AI and where it was being used and why it was being used. And I kind of decided, just from an ethical point of view, that you can't write using AI. You can't write books anyways using AI. That's not an original story. That's not a human story. So 100% of this book is written by just me. But one of the areas that I was going to have to get help with was the pictures in the book. And I was going to have to hire graphic designers. I would probably engage somebody overseas at an hourly rate that I'd be able to afford, and anticipated spending hundreds of hours working with them just to generate the images that I wanted. And I wondered about that just before Christmas last year, if AI could be used to generate images that would be useful to me. So I logged into an account, I had a free account at the time, and asked it to draw me a picture of an elephant. And it came back right away with an elephant in a style that it almost felt like the AI had reached into my own mind and drawn the image out of my mind and thrown it onto the screen in front of me. It was astonishing, and it did it so quickly. So I got a paid account to see if there's any difference, and the paid account allowed me to do more drawings each day, but it didn't really make any difference to how it was doing the drawings.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in the, really focused on doing this writing, where I was working, 8 or 9 hours a day just doing this, it was handy to be able to generate dozens and dozens and dozens of images over and over again. And I have to say that I sometimes thought of AI as AS too, because it drew some pretty stupid stuff sometimes. And that was the reason that you had to do so many pictures. Six-legged elephants, for example.
Uh-huh.
Um, but in the end, all of the images in the book are AI generated, and I don't see that as a compromise in the creation of the story. Um, Now, I could probably have gotten better images by engaging a graphic designer to use AI with their expertise to generate the images, but I really was impressed with what the AI did with image generation. And for the most part, it gave me everything that I wanted very quickly, quite inexpensively, and certainly with an efficiency of time
Right.
that I wouldn't have been able to match working with or collaborating with somebody else to do the
Right.
same thing.
When we do another podcast episode together, we'll have to bring out some of those images. Maybe we'll look at some of the ones that you rejected and some of the ones that you included. Um, and there's a tension to it with in the sense that we don't want to deprive graphic artists their livelihood, but on
Mm.
the other hand, I think that the pictures are really quite good. I would not be able to tell the difference between them and you know certain illustrated books that I've seen. You know, but like for you to get the exact look that you want with an illustrator, he would have to have taken hours to write. Like even the cover, we're looking at the cover right there. I mean, can you imagine the amount of time? Well, I'm a writer, not an artist. Maybe an artist could whip out something like that pretty quickly, but I can't imagine an artist being able to spend less than 30 or 40 hours on something like that. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I guess I don't know, but
Well, I've done a little bit of website development in which we've had to engage graphic artists to do
mm,
certain elements of it. And I can tell you that's expensive. Um, they do good work, but you do go back and forth quite a bit trying to get to what you actually wanted. And
right,
I guess part of dealing with an artist is going to be a comparison of their experiences to your experiences and what their mind's eye image of what you're describing in text is going to be compared to what you think it should be
right,
for what you wrote.
right,
Um, yeah, I see an opportunity for graphic artists to embrace AI and produce some really powerful stuff. And I suppose, recent movies Hollywood movies don't just use CGI anymore, but they use AI generated CGI.
Hmm.
And that does make the scenes in those movies really spectacular. So there's always going to be graphic artists. But for a simple little project like mine here, um, yeah, I was really impressed working with the AI. For the most part, I was really impressed.
Hmm.
I got to say, when things went wrong, trying to correct the AI was a little bit like arguing with a really clever, really creative 6 year old who
Uh-huh.
stubborn 6 year old who just didn't have the life experience to understand
Yeah.
that elephants don't have six-wheel drive.
Right.
Um, they're four by fours, and it's not that an elephant with six legs isn't a great idea, but it doesn't work. It's a different kind of story. So
So I just had a memory of a recent interaction with AI that I had, and if I could find the video, excuse me, the image quick enough, um, I think you'll get a kick out of it. Let's see if I can find it real quick. It is. I never really thought that I would ever have a chance to share this with anyone. It was just going to be me and my own, you know, shaking my head at AS, as you put it, instead of AI. See, let's see. I'm browsing here real quick. I should be able to find it here. Hopefully, I can find it quickly.
well, we can do a little slideshow together in the next podcast if you want, and
Yeah, if I
put
can't
a few of
find
these
it,
things.
yeah, yeah. If I can't find it in the next, you know, 20 seconds, we'll just kind of let it go.
I'm still tripping on that earlier question of the creative process. And one of the things that I had done as a part of this, writing this story, was accumulate real world images of elephants too.
Mm,
Elephants in families, different kinds of elephants, elephants in different settings, elephants doing different things. And I've got hundreds of pictures like that. And some of those pictures were reference pictures for me in creating the text to give to the AI to generate the image that I wanted.
So with ChatGPT, you're able to feed them images to work off of.
No, I haven't found a good AI service that will take an actual image and then just convert it into what you want. You have to write the text and say what you want. And
Okay.
then it's left to the imagination of the AI, if AI has imagination, and it does not. It's AI will always take just a really literal interpretation of what you've written down.
Hmm.
It lacks intuition and it lacks context. So you, as the human being creating or asking for the image, you've got to provide those parts of the image, the intuition and the context. What you get from the AI is literally what you asked for. And if you wrote something stupid, you get back a stupid picture.
Yeah. Okay. So I did find this. Um, so the prompt. This was with Grok.
Okay.
Um, and let's see if you can figure out what the prompt was by looking at the image. So I'm loading it now here. Unfortunately, this is not drag and drop. That would be nice, but I have to
You
go through
better
the.
work, Tony, because the build up to this is just killing me here.
I know, I know. There we go. Here it is. Okay, so what do you think the prompt was that generated this image?
I'm not even going to try and guess that.
Okay, you know who that is, or don't you?
Actually, I don't. I don't recognize the person.
Ben Shapiro. He's a
Oh,
conservative commentator.
okay. No, sorry, I don't know him.
Okay. Well, I asked um, Grok to generate an image of Ben Shapiro with nunchucks.
Well,
Well, it's none something.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know how to work the word chuck in there, but
yeah,
yeah, that's so that's you can kind of see the literal interpretation of what you were asking for
right.
there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah.
So just before we move on from the AI stuff, when I'm curious to know when like when you have an AI generated image and there's like something that, let's say it has 5 legs instead of four. Just can do you have the granular control over it to say with ChatGPT, say, keep that image. I like that image. I want that image, but just give it 4 legs, and will it oblige, or will it just create an entirely new image?
It sometimes does. Sometimes it seems a little sinister the way it responds. So the key phrase is, and I read something this week about AI that may be important. AI has some characteristics that they don't really understand yet.
Mm,
For
yeah.
example, it sometimes lies, deliberately
Yeah.
lies.
Right. Yep.
It's kind of a human trait. So I don't know if that's the beginning of self-awareness or what's going on with that. But the key phrase in trying to correct an image is keep this prompt in seed. So start with what you've done. So what I've started doing is using language where I first compliment the AI. Say that's good.
Mm,
I want you to keep this prompt in seed, but, and then the AI tools allow you to circle a part of the image. And you can then say in the center of the image, one of the elephants has an extra leg. Can you remove that leg, please?
hmm.
Or can you remove the leg that I circled? And it's kind of 50-50. Sometimes it'll do that correctly. And sometimes it'll do that correctly, but every other elephant in the image will then have 6 legs where they didn't previously. That's the sinister part.
Uh-huh.
Um, so you can sometimes correct the problem, but as I mentioned before, it is a little bit like arguing with a really clever 6-year-old, and you just can't get the message through.
Yeah.
And your only choice at that point is to just say, you know what, we're going to do this tomorrow. So you throw that image in the garbage and you come back and you start again with a modified text prompt for what you're asking for, maybe a little bit more specific, although there's an edge to that that
Mm-hmm.
creates problems sometimes too. You want to leave the AI to be as creative as possible. I'll give you another example. If you say, draw me a picture of a policeman on a motorcycle, it'll do a great job of that. If you say, draw me a picture of a policeman on a Harley Davidson motorcycle, that can get complicated
Mm,
because the way it interprets the words Harley Davidson can go, it's like asking for uh, nunchucks.
mm,
Um, who knows how it's going to interpret that and what it's going to produce.
yeah. So I know that we've pledged to revisit this, and part of this has been to get to know you a little bit. But I when you sent over a list of questions that you wanted me to to ask, or maybe I shouldn't put it that way, questions that you thought would be appropriate to ask if I was interviewing you about the book. I think it's worth um, revisiting one of them. You have one of the elephants actually die, and apparently you have a well thought out rationale for that, which, bearing in mind it's a children's book, I was interested to hear.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a complicated problem. Um, I had in the back of my mind before I even started writing the book that there was going to be a complicated part of this story, and that was, things like river crossings or walking elephants down freeways with traffic. These things actually happened in the real world journey with the elephants, and in the real world journey with the elephants, some of the elephants died. They didn't all survive the trip. Now, in a lot of books, that's maybe not a big issue, but in a children's book, it raises a question of appropriateness. And when I got to that part of the book where it was inevitably going to happen with one of the elephants, um, I had to stop and spend a few days just researching that question. And what I discovered was, children are always going to learn about death in some way. Sometimes it begins with death of a family member. Sometimes it's a little simpler, a little easier, like Goldie wakes up floating on his back in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the process that children go through learning about death is the same as anybody going through it the first time. And what I learned in writing this book is that a children's book is actually a good place to introduce death to children because there's a safe environment there. It's just just far enough removed from their real experience that they're not emotionally devastated by it, even though they might feel it emotionally. If they're attached to that particular character, for example. But it's also something that they can work through, and beyond that point in the story, they see that things go on and that the world keeps turning and that everything actually turns out okay in the end, at least for all of the other elephants anyways. It's just that
Mm-hmm.
that one that had the mishap.
Right.
um, so I was torn about it and wasn't sure I was going to include it, but it is a pretty powerful moment in the book, and it's it kind of adds to the adventure a little bit. And I got to say too, my own personal experience with stories like that, nursery rhymes are
Mm-hmm.
brutal,
Yeah.
uh, with devastating consequences and death and warnings. There's a lot of children's books already that have stories. Charlotte's Web, is
Mm-hmm.
in some
Right.
ways a book
Right.
about death. So
Yep.
it seems like an odd thing to include in a children's book, but it's actually been done before, and I think it suits this particular story as well, and makes it more than just a fantasy holiday for elephants.
Yeah.
There's a real adventure here.
Well, I think it's helpful to to know that in the journey that inspired the idea for this, that elephants did die, which I guess like that just makes sense. It seems almost obvious that that would have happened, but it hadn't occurred to me. So in a way, for this for the journey to have had importance, there had to be real risk, right? So like you've you've shown that there was risk, and some elephants, excuse me, paid the price. It was actually a risky thing that they attempted. But if there was no penalties, then there's no courage.
That's right. The reward is diminished at the end if there wasn't a price to pay to get there.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Of all the questions, that's the one you choose to throw on me tonight. That's
well,
it's all right. It's all right. We're
yeah.
going to get there at some point.
Right, and we will return to it. I'm sure the next time that we have this conversation, we'll bring it up again. So if you go to bed tonight, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have said, don't worry, you know, jot it down. We'll give you another crack at that apple. Well, I was interested in it. As you know, I have been working with the manuscript for a while, but then only recently did I actually sit down to all right, let's read it. And there were some other things in there too that would be questions that I have that are real curveballs. That one you're at least prepared for.
Well, I look forward to your challenge, sir.
Yeah. So let's take 10 to 15 minutes here, and then we'll wrap it up. We do have some viewers. If I've already invited them to ask questions or comments, and they have, we had the one about the creative thing. Let me just say, like, if you've got questions or comments, now's the time. This is your moment, because we will be wrapping this up here pretty quick. We have a release date for the physical books. Um, May 24th is what I have. It's a Saturday. Saturday, May 24th. That's when you can buy them on Amazon. Um, in the meantime, the as we made clear from the beginning, you can already get this on Kindle. You can go on Amazon, and you could get it. And if you in the spirit of adopt an author kind of a thing. You could get it if you're so inclined, like it, review it, and if you like it, then start telling people about it right now, so that when the physical copies come out, there's already sort of a market for it. So that's sort of like that's for my viewers more than it is for you. But you've actually made this available through translation services. You've released it in other languages too, I believe, right?
Well, that's another uh, thing about the AI these days. That this, first of all, the book wouldn't even be done right now if it wasn't for the image generation with the AI. But I was able to release it in other languages also to the credit of the AI. So it's still my original writing, but the translation was done by AI. So when I put it on Kindle, and we should mention too, it's not just Kindle devices, but electronic devices.
Okay.
You can download the Kindle app for any tablet that you have. So an Android, for example, or an iPad. But I was able to put it out in Italian, French, Spanish, and German, and thinking that native Chinese people would be interested in the story as well, because it was a big news story in China. Translated it to Mandarin as well. So a whole bunch of different languages on different Amazon marketplaces around the world. So it's available in a lot of different formats electronically. We're going to start, of course, in the print versions with English, but there's a huge opportunity to do other versions of it in hard copy as well. So
Yeah.
a lot of different directions this could go.
Okay. So, if you are secretly a Spanish, you said Spanish, right?
Spanish is one of the other languages,
Okay.
yes.
Spanish or German viewer of this program, and you really have a hankering to read this book in your home language, you are fortunate because our author has made that available to you. So go buy it. Is the bottom line. So you don't know this probably, but pretty much every episode, I encourage my viewers to go and buy 1,000 copies of whatever it is that we're featuring that night. Because I don't ask for donations. We're not doing what a lot of the other podcasters do with um, Patreon or something like that. Like we have something that we want to promote. We have books. Our audience we expect to be readers of books, and if you want to support the podcast, then support our authors. It just makes sense to me. I believe the Christian scriptures have a passage that says, "Do not muzzle the ox while he's treading out the grain." Have you ever heard that one before?
I can't say I have, no.
It's an actual biblical principle. Do not muzzle the ox while he's treading out the grain. In other words, the worker's worth his wages. So even even the ox, you should not deprive him of a reward from the work that he's doing. So in this context, it's if you enjoyed this program, if you enjoyed hearing what Rodney had to say, then it's only right that you go and buy his book, and even better, leave a review, because I know that you're having trouble getting reviews. That's right. I think we all are, but like you've had a you've noticed this problem yourself. I think, right? You want
Well, I know people are reading the book, but nobody's really saying anything about it. So
to, yeah,
they say, when they meet me on the street or something, or we're in a Zoom conversation, I hear their view, and
yeah,
it's all been positive. But yeah, I need somebody to put it down on
right.
Amazon or on Gutenberg Books for me, because that's
That's right,
that's where other people then see it, and it starts to ignite and go. If you remember what I said earlier about 7,500 new books a
right,
day,
right.
uh, flying through the Amazon window. Uh, this is the only way that people pick it up. If it's worth reading or not, is
Okay,
if somebody else has already said, "Yeah,
right,
that's all right."
right. So like yes, so like the reviews on Amazon or whatnot for a complete stranger, right? That's going to be a compelling thing. But a review that you give to a person that you know, like a referral. Hey, go buy this book. That's that's like worth its weight in gold, right? So we want both ultimately. Yes. So 5 minutes. Do you? Is there anything you want to say to, like anything you want to throw in here before we close this out?
Well, I'd leave off where I started in saying I'm glad Gutenberg Books is interested in this. I appreciate that opportunity to put this out there a little bit further. For the people that showed up to watch us review this, talk about it a little bit tonight, thank you for your time as well. That is hugely valuable uh, to us in these efforts for creating the books, and with Tony creating his podcasts. Um, Small publishing house, getting going and picking up new authors. I think you said earlier you had, is it 30 authors on your?
It's about 30. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's really good. I got to say congratulations for that. I'm glad to be joining this group, and hopefully I'll be able to pull my own weight, keeping things going here. So
Well, we don't muzzle the ox while he's treading out the grain. So
I couldn't disagree with that analogy. So yeah.
all right. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make you go dark while I make some closing statements. But if you just hang on for a few minutes, at the end we can talk offline after I've stopped everything. So
Thanks everybody. Thanks Tony.
yep. Thanks for being on tonight, Rodney. Thanks for putting up with the late start. I really appreciate it.
No, pleasure to be here.
Oh, it was one of the persons who was watching. I don't know if he's still watching or not. Was Joe Shaw, who I know that you know.
Oh yeah, yeah, right.
I don't think I told you who he was. The one that asked the question about the creative process. So just giving credit where credit is due. All right, well, thanks again. So let's make Rodney go away for a minute, and it's just me. So there was a bit of self scratching of the back today, trying to encourage my viewers to um, visit our website GutenBookPress.com. Find a book that you like, find an author that you like, and adopt them. But beyond that, there's I always want to at some point in the podcast give some idea of, like, the philosophy behind the podcast, and basically it's this: like we have a world that is just so inflamed with controversy and hatred and effective, because there's a business model of the media, I guess we'll call them, that really relies on creating these daily outrages, right? We're always outraged about this or that or that kind of thing, and we're always talking about today's outrage, and we're always talking about whatever the idea of today is. In the meantime, you know, through, there's just so many other things that have happened in history, so many other things that are going on in the world today that the media will never notice. It'll never be the kind of thing that uh, gets featured like in all the, like you could go on YouTube and watch 20 podcasts or 30 podcasts, and you're going to hear them talking about the exact same thing. And I just don't like that. Um, okay, I like that on my terms. Like I don't mind going and watching, um, one or two of them, or whatever. But like for me personally, I don't like having what I'm thinking about every day determined by people who are complete strangers who have agendas that I don't know. I want to think about deep things and important things that I'm interested in, and I want to talk about the people that I care about. And so if you want to like rise above the vitriol of the day, this podcast is the place for you. Yeah, I'm going to try to make you buy some books. It's true. But we're going to talk about things that are interesting. So just really quick. One of our podcasts was about JFK's inauguration speech. Just just a speech. Like he had a speech that people really liked it. Like what, 50, 60 years ago now. There's some big ideas in that. It should not be forgotten. Who's talking about JFK's inauguration? Nobody. You know who? Us. That's who. And we've explored lots of deep, provocative topics that are not part of the daily outrage, and we've tried to link it with our authors and our books. So, I hope if you like that, you know what to do. You need to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and tell your friends. Because for this to succeed, we need your help, and we really appreciate it. Um, I've talked about adopt an author. You can adopt a podcast too. So that's it. Well, we're done for the night. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And with that, we are out.